Ever since that one weekend where Zir rolled into town with a shiny new god roll, PvP has become fairly VoOP heavy, and you know what? Despite the hellstorm I may generate in my own comment section by saying this, I actually don't mind it that much. Yeah, fusion rifles with great rolls are easy to use in PvP, but we've had years of shotgun sniper at the top. It ain't gonna kill you to try something new. Besides, Big Daddy Bungie is watching the player data, and if VoOP Nation rises up too hard, I have no doubt that they'll just get crotch kicked back down to whence they came. Hi, my name is Fallout, and hey, you watching today's video, yeah, you, the guy who's watched several of my videos but hasn't clicked subscribe yet? I get it, you're afraid of commitment, but click the subscribe button and get lost in the warm and loving embrace of a content relationship. Check out my upload rate. I always put out, baby. Today I want to look at technically three fusion rifles that all came from Zir. We all know the OG main ingredient is damn good, but is that particular roll the best fusion rifle drop that Tentacle Boy Zir has given us after the fusion rifle rework? The three fusion rifles are going to be the main ingredient, and two different rolls on the Timeline's Vertex. We'll start with the main ingredient because I think way more people are familiar with that roll in PvP. I think it dropped first out of the three, and it caused a lot of mayhem right away. The Zir ingredient is a precision frame fusion rifle with a default charge time of 740. It's a dummy good weapon in the current meta because it hits the two major check marks. One, it is easy to use, and two, it is damn lethal. If you're unfamiliar, here's the roll. Red dot micro in column 1, and projection fuse and particle repeater in column 2, under pressure and tap the trigger, complete with a stability masterwork. Because the main ingredient has a recoil direction of 73 by default, there's IMO no need for you to go with counterbalance. I've actually been using Icarus Grip, believe it or not. Take it from me, boys, you haven't lived until you've started vooping people from the air. Pretty much every perk on that weapon drop is a top tier pick for a fusion rifle god roll. Under pressure activates immediately in PvP because it kicks in on a regular ingredient when you get down to 2 in the mag, and you spawn into PvP with 2 in the mag. Tap the trigger gives extra stability and accuracy for fusion rifles, which is just ridiculously good. It's essentially a free top tier weapon buff for just firing the weapon normally. I went into a private lobby with a buddy of mine to try and get a handle on how deep the consistent one-hit kill range was on the Zir ingredient. Keep in mind, by the way, I said consistent, so we're not talking about empowering rift, lunafaction boot, none of that meme bullshit. Just regular, good old-fashioned, pull the trigger normally and get a kill. We found that while you can get a kill from 22 meters away, it wasn't always likely. However, from 21 meters away, it was significantly more likely to happen. That is with under pressure active, by the way. Oh, and for the record, in my testing, you want to roll with particle repeater in column 2. Even though you'd imagine range would be the deciding factor, we had a little bit more success with particle repeater. Remember that fusion rifles really do appreciate stability. The more you have of it, the tighter your grouping of your fusion bolts will be, meaning you're more likely to connect with more of them from far away and lock up the almighty one-hit kill. Now, before I go into the pros and cons of using the Zir ingredient in PvP, why don't we quickly go over the competition? Timeline's Vertex is an adaptive frame fusion rifle with a default charge time of 660. If I remember correctly, the two Timeline fusion rifles from Zir came after the initial god roll main ingredient, and for that reason, I think a lot of people skipped out on getting them because, hey, I already got a god roll vooping machine, bro. It don't need me another one over here. The Timeline may hit with less damage per bolt than the main ingredient, but with the right roll, it's every bit as deadly in PvP. Here's the first Zir roll we're going to cover today. Firmly planted demolitionist with a range masterwork. In column 1, the other scope option given is the Spark PS, but I far prefer the Impulse MS3. It offers both range and more zoom, and even though I'm pretty sure zoom on fusions got toned down after the infamous destruction of the Arantil, zoom still is a factor on fusion rifles. One particular reason the Timeline is such a monster IMO compared to other fusion rifles like the Gambit monstrosity, the Trinary, is that Timeline can roll scopes which offer zoom benefits, whereas the Trinary can only offer barrels. In column 2 of the very first Timeline, the other option given is enhanced battery, and if I find out any of you are using that over particle repeater, I'm gonna be under your bed tonight. The only downside, if you want to call it that, on the Timeline is the inclusion of demo in column 4. Depending on how frequently you use your grenade in PvP, the perk may be kind of an afterthought. If I ever somehow acquired this exact roll out in the world, except with elemental capacitor in column 4, I would immediately want to hop on a Void class and try out that uber stability bar. Firmly Planted really though is the catch-up to the Timeline's French fry. You need both of them together. All you gotta do is crouch right as you begin charging up your shot, and you're gonna get a damn accurate, damn tightly packed fusion shot each and every time. Even though Firmly Planted does a ton in making your shot feel uber tight, I still rock the counterbalance mod on my Timeline. 60 default recoil direction is kind of begging to be corrected to 75, even with Firmly Planted already helping you out a bunch. That's just me though, you do whatever the hell you want. Back to our private lobby footage. We found that this particular Zir Roll was also very lethal from far away. While you could get a kill from 22 meters away, you kind of had to get lucky with a good bolt spread. 21 meters was a little bit more consistent with a random miss here and there, all with Firmly Planted activated, by the way. Overall, it was kind of farther away than I thought though, considering the first Timeline roll had a range of 61 compared to the main ingredient 80. But then again, that is the power of Firmly Planted. Finally, why don't we take a look at the third fusion rifle, which is also the Timeline's Vertex, but one that was sold more recently. It's very similar to the first Timeline fusion. Both feature Firmly Planted and both feature a range masterwork. In column 1, the newest Timeline has the Signal MS5 scope, which has one less range and one less zoom than the Impulse MS3, but other than that, they're near identical. The main difference with the newer Timeline is that it has accelerated coils in column 2. Currently, there's a visual bug in-game that makes it so that when you equip accelerated coils, the charge time number won't change in the description of the gun, but it does actually change. Now, I'll admit it, the difference in charge time is small. Watching both fusions fire at the exact same time in normal speed, you can hardly even see it. Only when you really slow down the footage can you notice the faster speed of accelerated coils. It barely fires quicker, but it does fire quicker. TLDR, the second Timeline is a hair faster, and we found out kills from about as far away as the other roll. While we did get one kill at around 22 meters away, it was only due to a really lucky bolt spread. 21 meters was slightly more consistent, just like the other Timeline roll. And before you bring it up, yeah, I did try the second Timeline roll with the liquid coils in column 2. It didn't feel as good to me. The slightly extra damage didn't really make a difference in the already stellar one-hit kill department. All it did was kind of extend the fusion rifle charge-up time, which I don't really want. For whatever reason, I kind of like the most recent Timeline roll a little bit better, the one with accelerated coils. I highly doubt that the fraction of a second faster charge time has actually come into play and saved my ass in a 1v1 duel more than a handful of times, but hey, every little bit can help. Overall, the first Timeline roll is probably far safer and more consistent, more stability, and a hair more range and zoom. Either way, those two are near identical and it doesn't really matter. The real question is, what should you be using, the Zir ingredient or the Zir Timeline? Well, it kind of depends on how you play and what you're looking for in a gun. In terms of charge time comparison, it's no contest. Either rolls on the Timeline will fire faster than the main ingredient, thanks to it being a completely different frame. Even though you would think that slower charge time would equal a much deeper one-hit kill range, we've already compared both rolls in a private lobby, and they essentially have the exact same consistent one-hit kill range. So if they both kill from around the same max range and one charges way faster than the other, kind of a no-brainer? Almost. The one area where main ingredient may have the edge is its lack of attachment to Firmly Planted. Whereas the Timeline is most lethal when you're on the ground and crouching, main ingredient only requires 2 shots in the mag to hit max lethality with no restriction on where the hell you're standing at the time. As I mentioned earlier, you'd really be shocked at how lethal the gun can be from the air with Icarus. You can also charge the weapon as you're leaping around a corner as opposed to sliding around a corner, which may be more predictable. If you're a hunter main, you filthy little goon you, or any other class who simply likes to jump around like a rabbit in PvP, you're probably going to find way more success with the Zir ingredient. If you ain't about that bouncy life though, yeah, you might be deadlier with the Timeline. I don't want to blue ball you guys. I do think it does boil down to personal preference and playstyle, but that does mean that I do have my own answer that applies to only me. So f it. Which is my favorite? It's the Timeline's Vertex. Keep in mind, I'm talking about Zir's Timeline's Vertex over Zir's main ingredient, out of the ones we've been given so far. Kinda recently, I've run into some Firmly Planted rangefinder rolls on the main ingredient in PvP, and I would literally do horrible, terrible sexual things to or for Zir in order to get my hands on one. Again, that being said, if we're measuring only the rolls we've gotten so far from Zir, I am leaning towards either of the timeline drops. I tend to play Warlock a lot, and even though I zoom around the map on Top Tree Dawnblade, I run and slide a lot. So to me, I get way more out of the much quicker charge time on the timeline. The gun totally rocks people and matches with my playstyle, but you do you. And in the future, don't sleep on Zir and the random ass crap he brings on Friday, and then again on Tuesday. Remember, 2 chances at getting god rolls each week, and even though they're often garbage, it ain't unusual for a big meta shakeup to drop right into your lap. Like today's video and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Appreciate those who do. Shout out to the patrons for the month. I appreciate all of you, and a big change is coming to my Patreon soon. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.